everybody, it's jrobi. We're going to take a look at a way to meet the Scandinavian today that doesn't require a lot of opening memorization. And this is actually something that I've been using for the last couple of years on my blitz games. Over the last couple of years, while I haven't been studying as much as I used to in chess, I'm ramping that back up. And this was a line that I like to do against the Scandinavian, which basically took me out of having to memorize a whole bunch of opening lines and remember it all the time. Because the frequency that I faced the Scandinavian, it wasn't very often, but when it came up, I knew that, obviously if you're going to use an opening as a player, you probably are pretty comfortable with it. You've looked into it at least a little bit, and that can give you an advantage in a game of chess. So if you're playing against someone's favorite opening, it's good to get them out of book early. So we're going to take a look at a way to do that today against the Scandinavian. So let's get started here. So Scandinavian, after white plays pawn to e4, characteristic move here is black pushing the pawn up to d5, immediately attacking the pawn. The best move to play as white in this position is just to capture. And now we have two commonly played moves here for black, the two most popular moves in this position. We're going to take a look at queen takes as the first one. Now the very best thing to do in this situation obviously is to develop your knight here to c3, immediately attacking that queen. Queen will peel off here to a5 in most games, and from here the move that will get your opponent out of book is simply pushing the pawn up to g3, and we're going to take a look at this line today. So after g3, your opponent has a lot of options here. A lot of times I'll see knight to c6 right away, but probably more common is you'll see a central thrust here from your opponent, trying to follow basic opening principles and get into the center as quickly as possible. From here, we're just going to fianchetto the bishop here onto g2, giving that bishop scope along this light square diagonal and also protecting that e4 square for the immediate push of that black pawn. We don't want black to get too much of the center. From here now, knight comes out to c6, and we push our knight up now to e2. Now this is a different move than you'll see in common opening books here. Most of the time they'll say put the knight onto f3, but this is actually going to work to your benefit in the long term to get your opponent out of book and out of comfortable chess positions. So from here now, bishop can come out now to g4. Now the following moves that we're going to talk about are actually coming from a chess game that was played back in 1994, and it's probably the only game you'll be able to find in this position from your large databases if you have one. And that's what makes this whole opening line really good to use against the Scandinavian, is that hardly anybody plays it. It's solid. It might not be as aggressive as some of the other lines that white has against the Scandinavian, but if you're not versed in the book lines, this is a great position to have to work with, because now that we're out of book, the game's going to be decided mainly by the tactical playing strength of both players. Okay, so it's going to be a good battle either way. So after the bishop comes out in the game, now the game was played between, I believe the name was Jacek Belchuk versus Thomas Jacko. And Jacek here pushes the pawn up to h3, immediately attacking the bishop on g4. Bishop peels back to h5, white castles and black castles as well on the queen side. Now we're going to get into a couple of interesting moves here. So after d3 from white, so just basically simple moves here. We're opening up access for the dark square bishop. If black plays something like f5, which is a really strong looking move, obviously it's getting a nice foothold into the center. We can play a3 to give limit the scope of that knight perched up on c6 there. When black brings that knight down, look at this move. Now take a moment and look at the position for a second. We're obviously doing two things. We're attacking the bishop, we're attacking the pawn, but there's a little move that's going to come up after that might surprise you a little bit. So pawn captures. What's your first thought in this position? Most chess players, especially beginning chess players, will immediately take back with this pawn. But there's a nice little move you have here. It's just knight to g3. It's attacking the bishop. Okay. Now the bishop's scope towards the white queen has been completely blocked off by its own pawn. So it's got to do something here. If it takes the pawn, obviously it just drops a piece. So that's not a good move. So black will probably retreat the bishop, possibly to f7, as was in the game that we're looking at. And from here you can capture that pawn. Now it might look a little strange here on the king's side for white, but this setup of the pieces can be quite good. So in the game, black played bishop to d6. White brought the bishop up now to e3 to activate that piece, also putting an attacker on the knight here on d4. Black brought its knight out now. In fact, let's go back a couple moves. Let's take a look at the position after here. Most of white pieces are coordinated and they're developed. In fact, white is really only sitting on one piece that hasn't really been developed, but we've already opened up access for that. Let's take a look at the black position. This knight here on g8 hasn't been developed. The bishop, while it has access, still, hasn't been developed, much like white's. And this bishop's been kicked around, so we've had a couple moves wasted here protecting that bishop. The queen on a5 has done absolutely nothing since the opening, because the play from white has really dictated the pace of the game in such a way that there has been no need to move this queen. The queen's not really contributing to the position at all, so it's basically just sitting there in a5 waiting to come into the game at some point. So let's get back to the game here. So bishop to d6. White brings the bishop up to e3 like we talked about. Black develops its piece there to g6, and white pushes up that pesky little pawn there on g5. Another really good move from this pawn that looked a little strange, but it's helping white coordinate the attack, and it's also harassing black, making black have to expend moves to defend pieces. Black retreats the knight now to d7. White develops the knight to e4, and while it might have looked a little bit sketchy in the beginning with kind of a slower opening strategy from white, we've got a pretty good foothold in the center here. We've got a pretty solid game to play from this central position. Black's got an isolated pawn. Now it's got to dedicate full pieces to protect it. It can't use other pawns because the d pawn is gone and the f pawn is gone. White, however, look at this pawn chain here. It's fine. It's all connected. We have a pawn that's isolated here on g5, but we still have the f pawn at some point to defend it if we can get it in there to do so. It's a fairly good position for white to work from. So black plays in the game pawn to h5. White doesn't capture. I'm going to flip back a move here. White doesn't take. White's going to maintain this pawn here on g5. There's not a huge threat with this pawn yet. Instead, white captures the knight here on d4, forcing the recapture with the pawn. And now white takes the dark square bishop off by snagging it up on d6. Black recaptures, and now we've got doubled pawns for black. So as you can see, the pawn structures for black are getting worse and worse as the game progresses. From here now, white has a beautiful move. Queen to f3, we're attacking two pieces. We're threatening checkmate here on b7. So black's got to do something about that. The only move that black has in this position to meet these threats is by swinging the rook over to f8 to protect that bishop and also to give the king an escape square on d8. But at which point white continues, crashes into the position, snags up the pawn here on b7, hits the check, peels the king off to d8, and to follow up with this now, white brings that light square bishop that was beautifully placed on g2 up to h3, giving two attackers to the knight now on d7. So you can see how quickly you can coordinate the pieces from white. And this isn't even a regular opening line in the Scandinavian. Now, obviously, each chess game is different, but I don't think it really matters. Like, you can analyze the opening position with any engine, and it'll tell you it's pretty much equal. So you got a good fighting chance with this opening line in the Scandinavian, and it's very easy to remember. And it meets everything in the Scandinavian. So we'll talk about that at the end of the video. Okay, so anyway, let's get back to the video here. So what's black's response to this? Well, black plays his bishop back now to e8. And we can definitely see here that the position is pretty bad for black at this point in the game. The bishops had to come back to the home rank. Got this poor knight just getting bared down here by two pieces. White's just coordinating all of its pieces in a hurry, and look at black's queen. It's still sitting there on a5. Okay, so after the bishop to e8, white plays now pawn up to f4. So we're connecting our pawns again. Black plays queen now to d2. Looks aggressive, looks scary, does absolutely nothing for black's position. White just swings that rook over now to e1, bearing down on that bishop onto e8, and there's a world of hurt that's going to be unleashed upon black here pretty quickly. Black replies, rook takes pawn, trying to get the white rook to recapture. It's just bait. We don't need to do that. We just take that bishop with check on e8. When the king recaptures, we utilize those two attacking pieces there, hit the check, king goes to f8, and from here, look at that move. Queen check on d6. Absolutely beautiful. We've hit the check. We're attacking the rook. It's a beautiful fork, and that's actually where the game ended. So it's a really good line to use, against the Scandinavian. You don't have to get into a lot of book moves. If we go back to the beginning here, there is another commonly played move from black that you can also meet with this. Let's just go back here, and that would be knight to f6. You'll probably see knight to f6 or queen takes d5 when you play the Scandinavian, probably 96% of the time. Like, it's the most commonly played moves from black in this position. And you can still meet this with the g3 strategy. You can change it up slightly if you want. Engine Analysis likes bringing out the knight to f3 right away. After black plays the captured pawn here on d5, we can now push g3 and get ready to fianchetto that bishop. You can also bring the knight out to e2 if you want, play an early g3. Either way, you're going to get into a very familiar position here. If I just flip through a couple moves, you're going to have a nice connected pawn chain. You're going to have this bishop beautifully fianchettoed along this diagonal. You have your knights ready to pounce out into the action and open access for your dark square bishop. You have potential pawn thrust here to f4 at some point. You're going to have a good game. So you don't have to memorize a tremendous amount of opening lines. This is a very easy one to remember. It served me well for quite a while, and I heard about it when I was studying the Scandinavian a long time ago. I came across this G3. Can't exactly remember when now, but I looked into it, I liked it, and it served me well, so I'm going to share it with you guys. Try it out, let me know what you think. Also, in this video series, I'm looking for some good ways to get out of book early against common strategies, common openings. I'm going to focus on dealing with black defenses first, and then maybe we'll get into some potential plays from black to get white players out of the opening books as well. But just kind of some practical ideas. If you have a good idea, or if you have a good line that takes opponents out of books, doesn't matter what opening it is, send me an email to jrobichess@gmail.com, and if I use it in a video, I'm going to give you credit in the video, and I'll share it out with my subscribers. So thanks for checking out the video. Oh, also a couple news items. I'm still working on the idea for the channel, whether I'm going to create a new one or use this one, but I did set up an account on twitch.tv. Haven't got it set up yet for streaming, but it's going to be ready to go soon. So I'll be streaming occasional things like working through chess tactics, maybe playing some chess games, maybe some even League of Legends stuff on the stream. The stream is just going to be for fun. It's not going to be anything super serious. So if you already have a twitch.tv account set up, go check it out. It's twitch.tv/jrobichess. There's absolutely nothing to see there yet, but it will be coming. All right, thanks for checking out the videos. Take care, and we will see you next time.